Good morning, Revolution, everybody, and welcome to our stream this morning. Rosanna and Ben and Harrison, good morning. So happy to be here with you.
Good morning.
Um,
Morning, comrades.
and we have a lot to talk about this morning. It's been one hell of a 7 days since we last met. Cuba removed from the state-sponsored terrorism list. Ceasefire announced in Gaza. And then this week you had that band of billionaire bandits appearing before the U.S. House of Representatives in the hearings, confirmation hearings of Trump's nominees for his cabinet. What a bunch! And this
Mm.
Secretary of Treasury, did you see that? Don't even support raising the minimum wage from $7. I don't know, it's been 30, 40 years. Well, it's all about the Benjamins, baby. It's all about maximizing profit.
Yeah.
We should not be prepared or surprised. But the left and the center and everybody better get ready for what's coming because Trump will be inaugurated on January the 20th. And so unity is very important. Left unity, left center unity. But we're going to talk about left and Marxist unity this morning. Is it a real possibility or a hopeless pipe dream? We're gonna get right into it. But first, Gaza ceasefire. Big deal, Rosanna, right? I mean, this is what we've been hoping for since October the 7th. What do you think?
Well, I think it is a tremendous deal. I would imagine it's a big relief to the people in Gaza, the Palestinian people, but I feel that they also have some reservations about it because the very next day they declared that, oh, we're not going to do it after all because they started blaming Hamas that they renegated on it. But it appears that there were other forces that said, no, we don't want the ceasefire. We want you to continue the war, and those are the ones that are stopping this. So I think we need to put added pressure and demand the ceasefire and allow people to go back and rebuild their homes.
Very important point. We got to keep the pressure on. Ben, what's your opinion? And who gets the credit? Biden, Trump, or the Palestinian resistance and the worldwide solidarity movement? Tell us what you think.
Yeah. Well, I think you set it up perfectly. I mean, the people's movements have put pressure on the ruling class and the imperialist interests of this country to put a stop to stop funding the horrendous bombing campaign. Civil liberties have been torn up in defense of this imperialist project, but that didn't stop us. We were out on the streets for months, all through the spring of last year, and those coalitions are just going to continue to build. So, whether Trump, who has claimed credit, I don't know what he's claiming credit for, Steve Wickoff and all this. I think that the ruling class of this country was forced to cave. I think that Trump is trying to curry favor. People know how popular the Palestine Solidarity Movement was here in this country. In fact, there are numbers out just recently that show that Harris's failure to fully back that movement really cost her dearly in the election. So I think both parties understand that Palestinian solidarity with the Palestinian people, and the peace process, and the need to stop this horrendous killing, has forced Trump into this posture, pretending he cares. He doesn't care. Of course, we know he doesn't care. He's putting Mike Huckabee as the ambassador to Israel. The Christian nationalist movement, supports the Greater Israel Project. But I think the victory belongs to people's movements. But we're going to have to keep our eyes on the prize our sights clear that this is just the beginning. We can't let an optics-filled moment like this. 114 people have all been killed since the ceasefire has supposedly been declared. So Israel hasn't stopped bombing yet. They may, but the people's movements need to be out on the street demanding that every bit of this ceasefire is enforced, and demand much, much more. This is just the beginning of the process of justice and for the Palestinian people.
Cameron, you're in Detroit, and Michigan and Detroit was the epicenter of the movement, the uncommitted movement, and has a huge Palestinian, Arab, and other Arab countries. What's the opinion in Michigan about the ceasefire? How are people responding to it?
People are responding, in the first place, obviously it's welcomed and it's a relief that the genocide could potentially be ended, for now, at least paused, if Israel does accept the deal and does stop the bombing for the first phase. But like Rosanna kind of indicated, there is skepticism that it'll be lasting. People are afraid that Israel will just, put on this show for Trump's inauguration, that, there's peace and this and that, because Trump did come to Hamtramck and met with imams and the local Arab community and said, I'm the peace candidate. The Democrats are a bunch of neocons and so on and so forth. So there's skepticism amongst the progressive elements and the communists here. Like, how long will the peace last? Will it last? Basically, there won't be peace until there's a political solution, independent and fully sovereign Palestinian state, and end to the occupation and the right of return. So until that, any kind of peace deal will be viewed in skepticism, but the credit goes in the first place to the Palestinian resistance.
Credit goes to the Palestinian resistance, the heroic Palestinian people in the first place who have endured this struggle for many generations. And I don't know what the right wing Zionists in Israel think that they're doing, because they think that they're getting rid of. But every bomb that drops, every person that is killed, is laying the basis for future generations to fight. People don't forget about that. Anyway. It's Cameron. You're right. A lasting peace won't happen until the Palestinian people have their own state with the right to return, and until the government of Israel fundamentally changes in a different direction where the Jewish and Arab people can live in peace. That's very clear. Well, Rosanna, also this week, Cuba removed from the state sponsor a terrorism list. That another big deal, no? And that's a victory for the Cuba Solidarity Movement, ain't it? Can't hear you.
Sorry. Yes, very much so. We started this campaign about, calling Biden to do the right thing and take them off the list. And many organizations did the same, and unfortunately, he waited till the last minute. But it just shows that the people's movement can really have an effect, and that we shouldn't discount any efforts. Now we have to do is making sure that we continue the pressure on the legislators to not put them back, to not allow Trump to put them back on the list, and then move towards ending the blockade.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you're on your way to Cuba soon, right?
Yes, I
We're,
am.
we have a delegation going down there to meet with our Cuban counterparts,
Mhm.
and I'm sure that they're going to hear what want to hear what happened and what our analysis is of the prospects going forward. And with the senator from Florida as the Marco Rubio, as the new Secretary of State, it's going to be a tough hill to climb to compel them to not revert back to putting them back on the terrorism list. But nevertheless, it was an important precedent that was set. So Ben,
Joe,
Rosanna, you go
yeah,
on.
I think what's important for all of us to remember is that, we've been on these roads before. We point to the civil rights movement, we point to all kinds of other movements, the farm workers, of not giving up and making that, seemingly impossible possible. So we have history behind us to show us that we have the power to make these changes, even though they may seem like, hopeless, but we have the power, and it's people's power uniting together to make it happen, and we can really do it.
Yes, one of my favorite sayings in the whole wide world was put forward by Nelson Mandela. And Mandela said, "It all seems impossible until it's done," you know, and to do it, you got to take initiative, and there's magic in bold initiative. Ben, I think your friend Bertolt Brecht said something like that, Um, when I think about the exact quote, I'll come to it. But Ben, both victories, solidarity with Cuba, SSOT list, the ceasefire grew out of initiatives of the left. Isn't that true? And movements that grew out of the left, and arguably, Ben, they could have come sooner had the left been more united and stronger, you know? Um, but the left, and in particular the Marxist left, seems to have a hell of a time uniting. I mean, there was the first international, it split. And there was the second international, and it
Yes.
split. Then there was the third international, and the Sino-Soviet split that came after the Comintern dissolved. And then the Trotskyites formed the Fourth International. And maybe there's a fifth or a sixth. I don't know what the hell is going on. And why is it so hard, Ben, for the left to unite?
Oh, a simple question, Joe. Nothing hard there to answer. No, I think. Well, I think there's several things. I think that we talk about in the Communist Party. We like to talk about the people's movements and the working class movement. You know, uh, the idea that leftism or Marxism can be a brand or like a kind of identity that you wear. It's what you do. It's the way that that working class puts itself into motion. So I don't think that the goal. I think we as communists are willing to work with any active and conscious sector of the working class and the people's movements. We come out of those sectors. So there are good people in many organizations, but the goal needs to be to build up the capacity of democratic membership-based people's movements. I think we have trouble, if you want to think of it this way, from both sides these days. So you have on the one hand massive social justice nonprofits, which are very well funded and have a lot of organizing know-how. But on the other hand, their ability to actually make concrete membership-based organizations is limited. The Communist Party, trade unions, these are membership organizations. Sometimes various church or religious groups can act like that. But then when we get to, the various Trotskyist groups, like we say, there's good, honest people in every organization, but the history of the funding of the Trotskyist left goes way back to the dawn of the Cold War. CIA spent an awful lot of money propping up all kinds of different anti-communist left groups through the Congress of Cultural Freedom, which at one point had 280 employees working for it, putting journals and think tanks and all these sorts of things forward. So there's a lot of, when we talk about the left, we have to be careful. We're interested in working in working class communities, neighborhoods with working class organizations. This is central to what we do. So our broad coalitions have to start there. It may be fun if you're, as in your student days, to get together in a bar and debate Trotsky versus Stalin, if you're into that sort of thing. But that has so little to do with what we need to do, which is organize ourselves as a class and put the masses in motion. So, we need to unite as a class, which means we need to fight racism, sexism, misogyny, anti-LGBT, bigotry, so that we can unite the most conscious sectors of the working class and put millions in motion, which is what Lenin said, and he was right. So that's my take.
Cameron, what do you think? I mean, what's the problem? Communist Party, we keep talking about unity, 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 unity. Rosanna give a speech, it's at the center of what we say. I give a presentation, it's at the center of the party's policy. So what do you think is the problem? And we were talking yesterday, and you had a recent experience with respect to organizing for an upcoming Martin Luther King Jr. Day celebration. I think that bears on the subject. We don't need to mention the names of organizations, but the experience, I think, is an interesting one. So why is it so difficult to unite? And what happened in the Detroit organizing?
First I want to commend Ben. I think Ben brought up a lot of really excellent points. But on the question of unity, I think it's not, especially amongst the working class, it's not built through schemes and resolutions and coming together in kind of like a pageantry or aesthetic way, but it's built, like Ben said, through mass struggle. And the communist basis of unity is the unity and political unity of the whole working class, not the Marxist left or unity with Trotskyites or anything like that. And I think the Trotskyites, at least in Michigan, kind of participate for the sake of recruiting members, and they'll say it's because they seriously want to strengthen the United Front, but in practice, it kind of has a petty bourgeois kind of student character to it, where it's really alienated and kind of under and actually overestimating the kind of balance of forces and the level at which the working class is ready to abandon certain causes of reformism, for instance. And it's revolution today. This is the time we're gonna have the revolution. And I think the struggle for real unity is often replaced by these like bare appeals and abstract propaganda, and it ends up being like kind of like a narrow sectarian party group being replaced for mass class and democratic struggle. And oftentimes that sectarian outlook will lead to kind of simplified methods and schemes of solving very complex problems for the working class movement. And it kind of creates a disunifying a disunifying effect when it's purportedly for the sake of unity. So just wanted to say that.
Boy, the Trotsky movement is having a hard time here this morning. but
Can I
the
tell you
problem, huh? Ben,
two
you
two
want to
yes,
go on?
one funny story. So in New York City, there's over 5,000, I think, different political groups in New York City, something crazy like that. It's a crazy town. But one of the things I like to do is at every demonstration, I try to see if I can find a new Trotskyist group I've never heard of before, and it happens every time. And so actually, my favorite there's one guy, I don't remember his name, but he's his own party and he has his own newspaper. So I always go up and say hi to him. That's one story. The other, yeah. So anyway, I think it's good. Oh, the other story, which is maybe a little less funny, and it shows how these things can be divisive and maybe nefarious, is when there was the Hunts Point strike, that big picket line that lasted a week up at in the Bronx a few years back. Somehow, the first people on the scene when the workers walked out were people associated with the World Socialist website, and they were out there before anyone had really heard about it because it was kind of a secret strike. They didn't do too much press in advance, and they were out there pamphleting saying the socialist thing to do is to break with your bureaucratic union. Now that to me was nefarious because that meant that those workers were immediately suspicious of any other solidarity groups who showed up. So I think there's bad actors out there. That's the real thing in other words, I think there's two ways that Trotskyism can express itself. Either it's kind of a silly student thing and we don't have to take it too seriously on that in that regard, or there's people who I think in the name of various isms act pretty nefariously. So I'm willing to work with anybody who has a broad-minded approach to building unity in the masses. I just want to say that.
But thank you, Ben. But Rosanna, Trotsky is they're having a hard time. But it's a larger problem than Trotskyism, isn't it? I mean, there are many isms on the left. There are the ex-Maoists, there are the anarchists, there are various forms of left nationalists. There's feminists, some who, and you could go on and on. Uh, is our concept of unity a unity based on ideas, or is it a unity based on issues? And what is the basis of our united front policy, in your opinion?
Well, in my opinion, it's based on not what's in it for me or what's good for me, but what's in it for us. As we look at we instead of me concept ideas. You know, it's I think at the very, very, very core of is that we need to shed the individualism. We need to shed the egos because those are the things that keep us from really thinking about the working class as a whole, thinking about everyone's what's good for everyone as opposed to what's good just for me, or doing some kind of a radical action just because it makes me feel good and like makes me feel really militant and all of that, as opposed to doing the really hard day-to-day work of talking to individuals, uh, doing the hard work of staying up all night and doing good posters or thinking about things, doing research and looking deeper into the different ideas that are being thrown out there, uh, and looking at, is this really what is good for the working class? Is this really what's going to bring about the change? Are these actions really going to bring about the change, or is it just going to make me feel like I'm a militant and a radical, and that's going to we can't do that. We have to always think about what's going to bring about the change. And in the party, our focus is the working class and what's the very next step to bringing about change. What is the current situation? What is the working class saying? We always take the temperature of the working class, and how do we move that forward? And I think that's what as communists, that's what we do. I also think, we're inundated with these ideas by the right, and they make them sound really nice, left thinking ideas. uh, they sound, oh yeah, radical, but we have to be very careful, especially in this next period. We always have to look deeper into what we hear, and not just because it sounds radical or because it sounds militant or it sounds great, that we should just right away take action on it or believe it. No, we have to do our homework. It's got to be a must, especially, as I said, in this next period.
Thank you, Rosanna. Some very important points. Ben, you mentioned the issue of uniting with other membership organizations as a very important point. But the fact of the matter is that most of the working class in this country are not in organizations, are not in trade unions. What is it? 11%, Cameron? 4 or 5% in the private sector?
Yeah, 10%,
Um,
6%, I think.
10% now, you know? Um, and our goal has to be to build a majoritarian movement. One of the biggest conclusions that Lenin came to before he died, that he put before the world communist movement, is that a precondition for revolutionary socialists, for winning the revolution, is winning over the majority of the working class. And so the issue, isn't it, how do we win that majority and move them in the struggle? And is it going to be around whether or not you support Trotsky, or you support Mao, or you support Che, or you support, whoever, Gus Hall or Henry, or is it going to be on uh, lowering the price of gas, uh, being able to raise the minimum wage, making sure your Social Security ain't cut, making sure your next door neighbor is not who's from Guatemala and been living here for 30 years, is not rounded up by ICE, and do these other left groups, so many people want us to form a new party with, have those issues at the center of their program, Ben? That's what I want to know.
Well, on the the good, there's good news and bad news, and I guess the same thing. The good and bad news is that no one's heard of any of the names you've just mentioned. I mean, the masses of people, So part of the thing we have to realize is that the social decline, and this has been mapped out even by very good bourgeois sociologists, right? The average working class person 60 years ago. Yes, this is I'm referencing the Bowling Alone book, but it's good on the numbers. The average working class person 60 years ago belong to literally maybe half a dozen membership organizations. One of the things the capitalist class thrives on is social decomposition. So the isolation, the alienation, the breaking up of blue collar communities and forms of social engagement. This is a huge problem. So one of our main tasks is to, I do a lot of labor solidarity here in New York. So many young working class people in the building trades or in various unions, the teachers union. It's like get your unions to have some ambition and organizing goals. In other words, like to what Rosanna was saying, our goal is to do the hard work, the day to day. How you win over the masses, what working people are trying to do themselves, is to build up power within those organizations. When the Communist Party was at the core of organizing the CIO, by the time, by 1947, they had organized pretty much 6 million industrial workers, really in 4 years. And the ruling class, that's when the ruling class got scared and started firing everyone and jailing people and seizing assets. The ruling class gets scared when there's that level of mass organization. So, as I say, I'm willing to work with anybody who's willing to do the work. I don't care what they call themselves. But I don't think most of these left fractions or factions, whatever you want to call them, they just simply aren't interested in the same things, most of them. And as I say, there's good people who, so many people are self-educating online, so they may go through a phase of calling themselves this ism or that ism. But the real question is, what are you doing in the day-to-day? And, there we have to be very clear. We are trying to organize the work to working class power. 40% of the workforce was in unions when the communists were organizing in the CIO back in the late 40s. Let's get back there. And then we can, I love this debating Trotsky and Stalin and Mao, but that's because I'm crazy. No normal person wants to do that. And that's not where the movements are. So we got to be organizing with the movements.
But Cameron, is the issue really debating Trotsky, Stalin, and Mao and whoever else? Or is it that you put forward demands that are not related to the issues that people are living day to day? I mean, someone told me that they were participating in a coalition for Saturday's demonstration in a major city in the South, and that they went to a meeting to organize it, and the people who were the main organizers said, "We're not interested in fighting Trump. We're interested in abolishing the police." That's the basis upon which we're. How are you going to organize a majoritarian movement in a big city, wherever it is in the United States, if you are not addressing the day-to-day issues that the people of that particular city are facing? Now, of course, police violence is a day-to-day issue, but abolishing the police is not. Today, I'm a favor of it, I'm for abolishing the state eventually in a new society. But that's not something. So Cameron, isn't the. I'm not sure I agree with Ben, and I'm willing to work with whoever they are, no matter what they say. I'm interested in working and building a movement with the majority of working people in this country, and that includes those who are supporting Trump right now.
Totally.
It includes those. So how do we do that if we're not? And I think that experience that you had with that, if you want to share, you don't have
Well,
to. That Martin Luther King Day demo is instructive.
yeah, the Martin Luther King event in Detroit, I think, is a good example of a broad-based coalition that's fighting on the issues, that brings together groups from the labor movement, faith groups, other worker organizations, political groups, and the main point is to prepare the working class and the oppressed groups to fight and resist the incoming Trump administration, and fighting on the issues, whether it's water shutoffs, environmental degradation, the cost of living, trade union rights, organizing rights, women's reproductive rights, defending immigrant workers and those without papers from deportation. And the Martin Luther King Detroit Steering Committee and Organizing Coalition has done a really good job of creating a broad based coalition that moves working people and democratic and progressive forces on the issues rather than on ideas and ideology and this person and that person. And I just, I think that stands in a kind of a contrast to the more sectarian, narrow approach to fighting on things, which is often self-serving for this group or that group or this individual and that individual. And I'm really excited for the event this year. And I think that the main group that kind of spearheaded it for many decades, Moratorium Now Coalition, they fought against evictions and they fought against water shutoffs, and they're bringing together a broad-based coalition now to fight against the incoming Trump administration. And I think that is just one example of forming political unity of the working class on the issues, and not on this or that ideology or this or that Marxist tendency.
Rosanna, some of our new members, not a lot, but some. Thank you, Cameron. Good points. Let's unite with this alphabet group. Let's unite with that alphabet group. Some of them have ML after the socialist communist name, and spend. Why don't we do that, Rosanna?
Well, I think we unite on the issues. If we can agree on the issues and the strategy, then we'll unite on that. But most of the time, that's not the issue. That's not the case. And so we just can't really spend that kind of time. It's so crucial to be able to demand and build those relationships among the working class. By building those relationships, it means that we have to be a part of solving some of the issues that are affecting the working class, that are affecting the concerns that the concerns that people are living every day on the daily, not some radical idea that they just can't connect because they don't know where their next meal is going to come from, or their job, or we're here we're expecting a big crisis because of the fires that we've just experienced. And we have to think that many people are concerned about the people who lost their homes, rightly so. But there's also the concern about the immigrants who lost their jobs, those that were housekeepers and gardeners and nannies and restaurant workers. We have to think about them. That's what we have to rally around, is meeting the people's needs and looking out for each other on the real daily stuff that shows that we are concerned and that we really have the best interest of the working class, best interest of them by being in their struggles, not by dictating what their struggles should be.
We only have a certain amount of time, and that time has to be spent meeting people where they are around the issues that are impacting their lives. And so you got to make a choice, Are you going to spend all of your time, arguing with other people who think that they know and that they have the right recipe, or are you dealing with the minimum wage, healthcare, environmental disaster, racist police violence, the attack on trans rights, and so on and so forth. We are for unity with other folks on the left. We think that there is a broad left, and that most of the left are not in organizations, including most socialists and Marxists, are not in organizations, and we are certainly in favor of working with them on the issues, and we'll engage in the battle of ideas as we focus on the issues. But we don't make our ideological agreement, that is to say that you have to support socialism, or that you necessarily have to support anti-imperialism as a condition for working together. And so if you're fighting against water cutoff, Cameron, in Detroit, we don't make ending the blockade in Cuba a condition for working together. Isn't that right? You see? And so the basis of the United Front, has to be the minimum issue that will bring together the widest number of people. If you read Dimitrov's United Front Against Fascism, given at the Seventh World Congress, what did they say? Tax the rich, um, uh, address the crisis, everyday crisis faced by working class people. You do those two things, we'll work with you, whether you're a socialist, whether you're a Christian Democrat, whether you're a centrist or a liberal, don't matter, and that's the important thing. Well, been a great discussion. We will continue going forward. Right now, we have to make sure that ceasefire stays in place. We've got to make sure that the Cuba remains off of the state sponsor of terrorism list. That's going to be a battle. We expect fully that come Monday, there is going to be a blitzkrieg attack by the fascist right on immigrants, But we also know that the immigrant rights movement and the labor movement are getting ready. We're not going to stand idly by and let them round up our children. Not going to do it. And so let's get ready to rumble, y'all. Because it's going to be a fight, and we're going to come out fighting smartly, strategically, in concert with the majority of our people and our class. That's the condition for unity. We're not going to be pushed down narrow sectarian paths. Good morning, Revolution, everybody. Until next week, stay strong, stay safe, stay in the fight. Ben, thank you for your wisdom. Cameron, thank you for your contributions. Rosanna, thank you for your insights. See y'all next week. And see you in Washington, D.C. tomorrow at the People's March and all across the country, wherever they may take place. Unite and fight against the fascist right. Take care, y'all.